Hello, and welcome back to the Drama Coach podcast. This episode is called Why Young Performers Need More Than a CV. My name's Lisa Southam. I'm an actor, drama coach, mum of young performers, licensed chaperone, and someone who spends a lot of time talking to parents and young people about acting, auditions, training, confidence, and the industry. And today, I want to talk about something that I think is really important for young performers and their families, and that's visibility. Not fame, not going viral, not pushing children into the spotlight before they're ready, but proper, professional, age-appropriate visibility. Because if you have a young performer in your house, whether they're acting, singing, dancing, making films, doing youth theatre, creating their own work, learning backstage skills, or just beginning to understand where they might fit in the creative industries, it can be really hard to know where all that work actually lives. You might have a few photos on your phone, a school production programme somewhere in a drawer, a dance show video, a self-tape from 6 months ago, a few credits on a CV, maybe a spotlight profile if they're at that stage, maybe an Instagram account if you're managing one carefully as a parent, but it can feel a little bit scattered. And one of the things I talk about a lot on this podcast is that young performers are not trying to get famous. Most of the ones I work with are building skills. They're learning discipline, resilience, listening, teamwork, professionalism, focus, confidence, emotional intelligence, and creativity. And when they do work on a production, whether that's theatre, film, voiceover, dance, backstage, music, content creation, anything creative, that work matters. So today, I want to talk about how we can start helping young performers see their work as part of a bigger creative journey. And I also want to talk about Scene Tribe, who sponsor this series of the podcast, because they've now introduced under 18 parent-managed profiles. And I think that's really exciting. Not because I think every child needs another platform, not because I think we should be turning children into mini professionals before they're ready, but because I think there's a really useful conversation here about helping young performers build a record of their work, understand their network, and start to see the creative industries as something much wider than just getting an agent or booking the job. So as I mentioned, this episode is sponsored by Scene Tribe, the professional network for the creative industries, built around the work you've done and the people you've done it with. And the reason I think it fits so well with the Drama Coach podcast is because so much of what we talk about here is about education, access, confidence, and understanding how the industry works. Scene Tribe is not just for actors. It's for performers, creatives, crew, directors, choreographers, voice artists, editors, photographers, designers, musicians, you name it. It's the people who make the creative work happen. And now, if a young performer is under 18, a parent or guardian can manage their profile. So the young person is not just thrown online to manage it alone. Far from it, that would be dangerous. The adult holds the responsibility for the account. And I really like that because for young performers, safety and support have to come first. So back to the episode. Why this matters, and by this, if you lost the track so far, by this I mean why young performers need more than a CV. Why this matters. One of the biggest things I notice with parents of young performers is that everything can become very audition focused. Have they got an agent? Have they got a self-tape? Have they booked anything? Have they had a recall? Have they been seen? And of course, those things are exciting. They do matter, and I talk about them all the time, but they're not the whole picture. A young performer's creative journey is much broader than that. They might be in a school show. They might do youth theatre. They might help make a short film with friends. They might take part in a drama festival. They might dance in a production. They might record a film. They might record a voiceover. They might write something. They might help backstage. They might do a workshop. They might be learning screen acting, stage acting, musical theatre, movement, accents, improvisation, devising, or public speaking. And when we only focus on the big, shiny credits, we can miss the value of all the other work they are doing. Because actually those smaller experiences are often where the real growth happens. That school play where they learnt to project their voice. That short film where they learnt what a mark was. That dance show where they learnt stamina. The workshop where they met someone kind and inspiring. That self-tape where they didn't get the part, that they suddenly understood stillness on camera. The youth theatre production where they learnt how to be part of an ensemble. Those things count. They build the performer. They build the person. And I think there's something really powerful about helping young performers to see that. Not in a pressured way, not in a let's make every hobby into a career way, but in a look how much you are learning. A profile is not just about being found. When people hear profile, they often think, oh, it's about being discovered. And yes, visibility is part of it. But for young performers, I think profile can also be about reflection. I've noticed with the guests on my podcast that hearing their introduction that I've written for them, sometimes they really enjoy hearing that because it's like a very short mini CV. And I noticed in applying for a job, writing my own CV, standing back and reading it, you can feel really proud of yourself. And I actually think it's a really nice activity to do for yourself, for your child, with your child, to look at those achievements. So back to my point, building the profile can be about reflection. It can help them ask these things. What have I done? What did I learn? Who did I work with? What skills am I building? What do I want to do more of? What am I proud of? What sort of creative work excites me? And that is such a healthy way to frame it, because we don't want young performers only measuring success by outcomes. Did I get the job? Did I get the agent? Did I get picked? Did I get the lead? All of that can be really brutal, especially for children and teenagers. Instead, we want them to see their journey as something that grows over time. So yes, add that credit, add the training, add the production, but also have the conversation around it. What did that experience teach you? Who did you enjoy working with? What felt difficult? What skill improved? That is where the confidence comes from, not from pretending everything is impressive, but to be able to look back and think, actually, I am growing. My next point is seeing each other's work. And this is another thing I think is really interesting about Scene Tribe. It's the idea of work being connected. Because in creative industries, we rarely work in isolation. A production is not just one person. It is performers, directors, producers, writers, editors, choreographers, stage managers, camera operators, sound, lighting, costume, parents doing lifts, chaperones, keeping the children safe, teachers building skills in the background. It is a whole web of people. And for young performers, I think that's a really important lesson. You're not just a name on a cast list. You're part of a team. You're part of something bigger than yourself. And when young people begin to understand that, they become better performers. They listen more. They respect crew. They understand timing. They learn not to make it all about them. They start to see that the director, the camera operator, the sound person, the choreographer, the editor, the stage manager, they're not background people. They are the work. And I love anything that helps young performers see the whole creative ecosystem, not just the bit where they're center stage, because honestly, that's one of the biggest markers of maturity in a young performer, not just their talent, but professional awareness. Can they be kind on set? Can they listen? Can they wait? Can they take direction? Can they understand that everyone is doing a job? Can they respect other people's work? I think that matters. My next point is expanding your network without being pushy. So let's talk about networking, because I know that word can make people cringe a little bit, and I am definitely getting better at it myself, to the point that I would say I really enjoy networking. And for young performers, it can sound a bit too grown up or a bit corporate or even a bit uncomfortable. But networking doesn't have to mean being pushy. It does not mean DMing everybody, asking them for opportunities. It does not mean collecting contacts like trophies. And it definitely does not mean children being left to message adults in the industry on their own. Goodness, that would be terrifying. For young performers, networking should mean building positive, appropriate, real, creative relationships over time. And maybe some friendships too with those other members of the, age appropriate members that they are working with. So these relationships might be remembering the director who gave them a kind note, being part of a youth theatre company, keeping in touch with a drama teacher, working with the same group again on another project, being remembered because they were professional and prepared, being known as someone who listens, works hard, and brings good energy into the room. And for parents, this is where we can help, not by forcing connections, not by chasing people, but by helping our children understand that relationships matter. How you behave matters. How you communicate matters. How you respond to disappointment matters. How you treat other people matters. The industry is big, but it's also surprisingly small. People remember the young performers who were kind, focused, and prepared. They also remember the parent who was calm, respectful, and easy to communicate with. And I have heard horror stories of children losing the jobs because of their parents' behaviour. And we've talked about this before on the podcast. So this is something we can control far more than whether somebody books the job or not. Next point, the parent-managed bit really matters. Now, I want to really underline this. If your child is under 18, anything professional or semi-professional online needs adult support. There are plenty of arguments that children should not be on social media at all, not even parent managed. But if you're deciding to have one, do not leave them to be allowed to be online by themselves. Always support them. I'm not a fan of children being left to manage their profiles or public facing accounts alone. This is just frightening. It's too much responsibility. They need guidance. They need boundaries. They need someone checking what's appropriate, what's safe, what should be public, what should not be public, and what information does not need to be online. So the parent-managed part of these new under 18 Scene Tribe profiles is not a tiny detail. It's the point. I already heard of some children signing up and then the system will detect it and contact them and, suspend their profiles until they've got a parent-managed element there. So this is the point, to keep them safe, because as parents, we could help our children build visibility without handing over their safety. There's a few sensible things I'd always think about. Don't share school details publicly. Be careful with exact locations. Perhaps don't post times or something regular. You don't want to show a class that they're going to regularly at a particular location at a particular time or a particular theatre, for example. Think before adding anything that identifies those routines, timetables, etc. Keep contact going through the parent or the guardian. If you've got interest via a direct message or whatever, just move that over to email. Once you've established a connection, just share an email and get it over to the parent's email. Make sure photos and showreel links are appropriate and current. Don't feel pressured to include everything. Keep checking in with the young person. Are they comfortable with this? Do they understand what's being shared? Do they know that they are allowed to say no to that photograph or whatever it is? You could also get the agent involved too. So young performers need visibility, possibly, if you're deciding they do, but they also need agency and they need the adults around them who can hold those professional boundaries. So perhaps you're choosing that content together. And like I said, perhaps with your agent involved as well, or perhaps just yourself and your child. So what would I actually put on a young performer's profile? So if you're a parent listening and thinking, yep, I'm doing this, but what should I actually put on there? Personally, I'd keep it clear, simple, and honest, starting with the basics, a first name or a professional name, if that's what you use, their general location, don't be specific, the disciplines they are generally doing, acting, musical theatre, dance, singing, voiceover, presenting, backstage, writing, that sort of thing, the training they're doing. Again, not the locations, but they're taking drama classes, dance school, Lambda exams, screen acting workshops, youth theatre, school productions, etc. where relevant. The skills they have, accents, dance styles, instruments, sports, languages, singing range. And the media could be headshots, a show reel, or a simple self-tape clip. Well, I say a self-tape clip, perhaps a simple, small monologue. You don't want to be sharing self-tapes that you have been given. Perhaps it's a self-tape, something that you've created. Credits, productions that they've genuinely been a part of. And I wouldn't overinflate it either. That's quite important. We don't need to make the children sound older or more experienced or more polished than they actually are. A clear, honest profile is much stronger than one that feels padded, I think. If they've done a school show and 3 drama workshops, that's great. If they've done some professional commercial or youth theatre production, that's fine. If they're just starting out, that is fine too. The point's not to pretend, the point is to build from where they are. Multidisciplinary young creatives. One of the things I really like about Scene Tribe is that it recognizes people often do more than one thing. And that feels very relevant to the young performers because most young creatives do have a multitude of disciplines without even realizing it. They might act, sing, and dance. They might make films. They might edit videos. They might write monologues. Maybe they help with costumes, create content. They might be interested in photography. They might love backstage work as much as they love performing. And I think that's wonderful because sometimes, especially in acting, we can become very narrow. We get an agent, we get spotlight, we get auditions, and we book jobs. And yes, those things can be important and they absolutely are part of the journey. But the creative industries are so much wider than that. There are directors, writers, producers, editors, designers, choreographers, the list goes on. Voice artists, photographers, stage managers, intimacy coordinators, casting assistants, drama teachers, facilitators, movement directors, dialect coaches, so many more roles for people to explore. Your child might become a director, they might become a writer, perhaps they'll teach, they might produce, go into film, work backstage. They might become a confident adult who uses all of those drama skills in another career entirely. And none of that is a failure. That's growth. So when we help the young performers build a fuller picture of their creative skills, we give them options. We stop saying you're only successful if you book the role. And we start saying you're building a creative life. So the bigger lesson, your work leaves a trail. I think this is one of the healthiest lessons for young performers. Your work leaves a trail, not in a scary way, in a good way. Every production teaches you something. Every class adds something. Every person you work with becomes part of your creative story. Every skill you build gives you another tool. And over time, that becomes a body of work. For children and teenagers, it might be a very early body of work. It might be small, it might be local, it might be school-based or youth theatre-based, but it's still real. And when young performers can see that, they often stop feeling so desperate for the next thing to validate them. They can look back and say, I've done things, I've learnt things, I am part of this world. I think that's really powerful, especially in an industry where rejection is so normal. Because when you don't get the part, you need more to hold on to than just that one result. You need to know you're still building, you're still learning, you're still connected, you're still allowed to keep going. A gentle word of caution. Now, because this is the Drama Coach podcast, and because I work with parents and young performers all the time, I'm going to be honest. No platform is magic. No profile gets you a career on its own. No website replaces good training, good behavior, good communication, resilience, patience, and a realistic understanding of the industry. Please don't sign your child up to anything thinking, oh, this will make it happen, because that's not how it works. A profile is just another tool. A CV is a tool. A showreel is a tool. An agent is a tool. A self-tape can be a tool, but the performer is the work. Their listening, their craft, their attitude, their preparation, their ability to cope with no, their ability to keep learning. So use these tools wisely. Use platforms that feel aligned with your values. Ask questions. Read the information. Keep your child safe. And don't let online visibility become pressure. It should support the journey if you choose to use it, not take over the journey. How I use Scene Tribe as a parent. I treat it almost like a living creative record. Not something to obsess over every day, not something to keep refreshing or measure its worth, but a place to gradually add a new production, a new skill, a new workshop, a showreel clip, a collaboration, a credit. And I use it as a conversation starter with my child. What should we add? What are you proud of? What do you want to do more of? Who did you enjoy working with? What skill are you developing next? What would you like people to know about you as a performer? I think that's a lovely way to keep a young person taking ownership of their creative journey, not in a pushy way, but in a reflective way. And I think that's where parents can make such a difference. Again, you've heard me say this before. I don't want to tell you how to parent. This is just useful, I feel. If you want to take it, then take it. If you want to adapt it, adapt it. We can help our children slow down and see their progress, I think, with creating some sort of profile, because sometimes they don't see it. Sometimes they're too busy comparing or wondering why someone else got the part, or worrying if they're behind, or too busy scrolling if they're of that age. And we can say, hang on, let's look what you've done. Let's look what you're learning. Let's look at the people you've worked with, and let's look at all of these skills that you're building. That is confidence, not a sort of loud confidence. Look at me, I got this part, but a grounded confidence. And I think this links so closely to what I try and do with the drama coach. I want parents and young performers to feel more informed, less panicked, less confused by the industry, less alone, I hope, because it can feel like everyone else knows what they're doing. Everyone else has got the agent or got the audition or has the perfect headshot. And a lot of that can come from pressure on, Instagram or Facebook. Nothing wrong with using those places. Nothing wrong with looking at other people's work and celebrating their successes. But sometimes that can become a lot. It might feel like everyone else is going somewhere faster. But most people are also figuring it out as they go. And one of the best things we can do is build slowly, clearly, and honestly. Learn the terms, understand the process, get good training, make good choices, keep records, build relationships, build friendships, stay safe, protect the joy, and keep the young person at the center of it all. Not the credit, not the platform, not the casting, but the young person. Practical takeaways for parents. So if you're listening to this and you have a young performer at home, here are a few practical things you could do this week. 1, make a simple list of what they've done, not just professional credits. Include school shows, youth theatre, dance shows, workshops, short films, Lambda exams, self-tapes, voice work, backstage, writing, anything that's creative and feels relevant. And I think you'll be surprised at what a huge list you and your child have. Number 2, next to each one of these, write what they learned. Maybe it was confidence. Maybe it was projection. Maybe it was camera eye line, stamina. Maybe it was being brave enough to attend that audition. And then number 3, think about who they've worked with. The teachers, directors, choreographers, the youth theatre leaders, other performers, photographers, coaches. Not so you can use people, so you can help your child understand that creative work is relational. It happens with other people. Number 4, check their current materials. Are their headshots up to date? Is their CV clear if you're using one? Do you have recent monologue or self-tape clip that you're allowed to use? Do you know where everything is? I've been caught by that too, in a bit of a panic, suddenly needing to send something and kept my files in a bit of a pickle. Yeah, I need to take that away today and go and have an organise of my online files for sure. Number 5, have a chat with them about boundaries. What are they comfortable sharing? What should stay private? And how will you manage communication? How can you make sure that the adult is leading the safety side of this? I think that's a really productive starting point. So I'm going to talk about Scene Tribe one more time. If you're curious about Scene Tribe, you can visit scenetribe.com, have a look around, read the manifesto, read the FAQs, see whether it feels useful for your young performer or for you if you're listening on your own behalf. The under 18 profiles are parent or guardian managed. And the idea is that young performers can begin to represent their creative work properly while still having an adult holding the responsibility. And as always, I would say, do your own reading, ask questions, make sure it feels right for you and your family. But I do think this is a really interesting step because young performers do deserve to be seen if they choose and you choose for them to be seen, not exploited, not overexposed, not pressured, but seen and supported and recognized for the work they're doing and the skills that they are building. So that's it for today's episode. A slightly different one, but I hope a useful one. Because whether your young performer is right at the beginning, already working professionally, or just exploring where they might fit, I think it's really helpful to start thinking about their creative journey as something that's connected. The work matters, the people matter, the learning matters. And when we help young performers understand that, we give them something far more valuable than just a list of credits. We give them perspective, we give them confidence, and we help them build in a way that's safe, steady, and real. If you found this episode helpful, please do share it with another parent of a young performer or with someone who's trying to understand how to support a child or teenager in the creative industries. You can find me on socials at The Drama Coach, and you can find out more about Scene Tribe at scenetribe.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode of the Drama Coach podcast.